welcome to Lessons in Logic video number 58. We're not going to hit 60. It looks like we've got one more after this, unless I decide to do an extra later, but I probably won't. I'll do one more after this as sort of addendum. This is the conclusion video then. The last one is, I don't know, appendix addendum. I hate that my opening spiel is being interrupted by this sound from whatever system it is that makes that noise. Okay, so this video will have in the lower right corner of the screen attributed to NHK9 this picture of Lion Rock again because I like it and I want to wrap this up without finding a new picture. Video number 58, Lessons in Logic. We're finished. Let's review the whole dang course of logic we just went through with all 57 videos leading up to this. And specifically, let's do a list of methods first. I hope I didn't leave anything out of this list. Methods using categorical logic. We have the method of immediate inferences, which tests for validity and invalidity. And we have, in this method, the ability to test arguments for validity or invalidity that are immediate inferences in categorical logic. Then we have three methods of testing for validity and invalidity categorical syllogisms: the Venn diagram method, the six rules method, and the mood figure combination method. Then we have the counterexample method, which can be done in categorical logic. Only works on invalid arguments and not even all of them, but can be a very useful basic exercise in studying argument patterns. And it can demonstrate invalidity of an argument form, but not validity. And it may not demonstrate successfully invalidity of an argument. It depends on whether you got the specific enough form of the argument, because arguments have more general, more specific forms. Every argument has the general form premise, conclusion, or premise, premise, conclusion, or premise, 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 conclusion, depending on how many premises there are. And you could have premise, 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 conclusion, or more premises than that. Arguments also obviously have more specific patterns of reasoning, and it's the specific ones that matter. Now that applies to the counterexample method when used in proposition logic or statement logic as well. It works on some invalid arguments. It proves invalidity, not validity, and it proves invalidity of an argument pattern, not necessarily of an argument, but it will prove the invalidity of the argument if you got the specific pattern. All right, so then we have three methods that you can think of as proving validity and invalidity, and you can think of them as separate methods if you like, but it might be better to think of them as two methods. The famous forms method works not on every argument, but on every argument that uses one of the famous forms. It can prove validity or invalidity. And then there's the truth table method, full version and abbreviated version. They work on any argument that can be symbolized using proposition logic, except the full truth table method won't work on arguments that have too many atomic propositions for you to include in a chart. So the abbreviated truth table method is generally better. And then we have the proofing method, which illustrates and proves validity and makes us rethink how should we define logic, study of methods for determining whether the premises of an argument provide adequate support for their conclusion, or is it rather the study of how propositions and sets of propositions relate to propositions, specifically when one proposition by itself or in coordination with others supports another proposition. And the proposition supported is the conclusion. And it's an argument with just one premise if there's a proposition that supports it by itself. And it's got more than one premise if it's supported in coordination with others only. All right, so the proofing method allows us to prove that arguments are valid. And as we know the proofing method, that's all it does. Though I briefly mentioned some videos back my suspicion that you can expand the proofing method nicely to do a little more than that, but never mind that. For now, that doesn't go in this review video. Now we have a list of methods using inductive logic. Perhaps most obviously, recognizing informal fallacies. It works on lots of arguments, most of them inductive. It identifies informal fallacies. It doesn't guarantee an argument is strong. It frequently can be used to show that an argument is weak. That's pretty much all it does. So it works on lots of arguments, but not all inductive arguments. The evaluating arguments from analogy method works on arguments for analogy. Test them for strength and for weakness. That's great, but it only works on arguments from analogy. And then the method of evaluating arguments from authority tests for strength, weakness, sometimes even validity, and it only works on arguments from authority. So is there any method for inductive logic that works on all arguments that are using probabilistic reasoning? If there is, I've never met it. I don't know what the method is. I've only got one that works on lots of arguments, one that works on arguments from analogy, one that works on arguments from authority, and then one that works on causal reasoning. And that's Mills methods, or Mills list of methods. And it analyzes situations to determine the causes of things, and let's just leave it at that. Then we have the method of studying inferences to the best explanation, briefly introduced in the last video. And that method is just to identify the explanation, identify the thing or things to be explained, and see if it properly explains that without being needlessly complex. And that works on inferences to the best explanation. So again, we have here strategies that will cover a whole lot of probabilistic reasoning. But this is not going to cover everything. I don't know of a single method that'll cover everything. I don't have a single set of methods that'll cover everything in probabilistic reasoning. Take what you've got, maybe add some more later, do your best, and use good judgment. Here's a summary of nearly everything we've learned. With that summary, I will wrap up this video, and then there'll be one more video next week as a bonus of sorts. Here's a summary of lots of stuff we've studied in this series. Is an argument meant to prove its conclusion, or only to give good reasons for believing it? If it's only meant to give good reasons, not to prove, then we are well justified in thinking the argument is inductive, not deductive. If it's inductive or deductive, we can ask if it's an argument from analogy or from authority. If it is, then we use the method of analyzing arguments from analogy, or the method of analyzing arguments from authority, whichever one applies. If it's not, we want to see if we can find out if it commits any informal fallacies. If it does, it's probably a weak argument. And then also it's uncogent. If it's weak, it's always uncogent. If it does not commit any informal fallacies, then there's a very good chance it's a strong inductive argument. But there needs to be more analysis of the content of the argument to support the premises provide for the conclusion if we're going to be sure. And at some point, there may be no method available. There might just be, you have to use good judgment. And I don't have a lot of advice for you on how to use good judgment, except do all the stuff we've been doing through this whole series to become the kind of person who can use good judgment. Sometimes you need to develop yourself, not just follow a particular rule. Now, back to the top. Is an argument meant to prove its conclusion for certain, just to give good reasons? If it's meant to prove, then it sure looks like a deductive argument. It's good to figure out whether it's more obviously a statement logic thing or a categorical logic thing. Now, I maybe shouldn't phrase it this way. An argument that is the same argument could be analyzed according to statement logic or categorical logic, probably, which is why it helps to have more advanced methods and to use predicate logic, which combines the tools of statement logic and the tools of categorical logic, but I have no intention of going over that in this series. So do your best to figure out whether the most prominent features of the argument are categorical or statement logic features. Or maybe just ask, does it feel like it's doing categorical logic, or does it feel like it's doing statement logic? If it feels like it's doing statement logic, put it into standard form, test it for validity using a truth table method, probably the abbreviated truth table method. But if there's not too many atomic propositions, the full method might work just fine. If it looks like it's using categorical logic, find out if there's only one premise. If there's only one premise, then sure looks like it's an enthymeme. No, sure looks like it's, if there's really only, let me rephrase that. Is there only one premise? Yes. If so, ask if there's an unstated premise and there's not really just one, in which case identify the unstated steps. It's an enthymeme. Identify the unstated step and then test for validity using one of those methods that will work on categorical syllogisms. If it's not an enthymeme, there's really just one premise, there's no unstated step, use the immediate inferences method, though it may not apply to just any immediate inference. You may be left with having to use good judgment, but you have a lot of options that will work between the square of opposition and the rules for conversion, obversion, contraposition, and which ones are valid. If there's more than one premise, ask yourself, well, is it just two premises and nothing is left unstated? If so, then it sure looks like it's a simple categorical syllogism. Put it into standard form, test it for validity. You have your choice of Venn diagram method, 6 rules method, and mood figure combination method. Choose the one you like. If it has more than two premises, then it's probably a soriety, like a chain of syllogisms. Identify all the subconclusions. Test each step of the argument. For validity, using, again, your choice of Venn diagram method, 6 rules method, or mood figure combination method. That's it. That's most of what we've studied this semester. One thing I left out over here, if it's an inductive argument, you still might do very well to ask, is it an argument from analogy or authority or an inference to the best explanation? And if so, use the relevant method. Or indeed, causal reasoning, in which case, see which one of Mill's methods is employed, if any. And that's it. I have no closing words of wisdom in this video. My brain's not shot completely to pieces, but I'm not at my best. I am so tired. I need to finish this. I'll do so in the next video, where hopefully wise words to wrap things up are available, but we'll talk about them in the next video.